Yes, this video is finally here. Our comparison between the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 5 and also the OPPO Find N3, also known as the OnePlus Open. They are just the same phone but with different names. We've already hinted about this comparison video for quite a lot of times in our full review of the Find N3, and I have spent the past 2 weeks just comparing these two devices. This is going to be a very long video, so I'll leave all of the timestamps down in the description below. And just to be clear here, no matter what people are saying, these two phones are not perfect. None of the phone is better than the other, and there are a lot of compromises between these two phones. And we'll just start off by talking about the cover display. Aside from the very obvious size difference, these two displays have very different technical capabilities in terms of its color reproduction. It's clear that the color accuracy of the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 5 is just much better than the OPPO Find N3. I mean, I have no idea why OPPO's screen color is not that good, since I kind of expect at least 100% of sRGB color gamut coverage, but we don't get that. The maximum brightness is also another point that I want to highlight here, and from our test, the Find N3 is dimmer than the Z Fold 5. But I'm sure many of you will say that the wider cover display of the Find N3 is obviously gonna be better, right? Well, that also means the inner display of the Find N3 will be wider than before, and that's just very uncomfortable to use. You cannot reach to the other end of the screen with just one hand. Honestly, I know a lot of people are saying that the Galaxy Z Fold 5's cover display is too thin and they want a wider display, but truthfully speaking, I think I like this thin and tall display, and it is the correct way to go. Sure, many apps will have black bars at the top and bottom side of the screen, but I think that's the least of my concerns. What Samsung could have improved though is by shrinking the bezel size of the cover display. That would have been much better than just blindly making the phone wider. Why? Because we'll have to talk about the inner display. The wider display on the OPPO Find N3 makes it just impractical to hold with one hand. It's not impossible, but just uncomfortable even with big hands like mine. One thing that I do want to talk about is how I use these phones to read books. Specifically, if you use the Google Play Books and then you fold it halfway, it will create a book-like interface by just splitting the text into two halves of the screen. Then, since my hand is on the volume button, I can press those buttons to change the pages. I've been doing this on the Galaxy Z Fold phones for years right now, and if I want to do the same on the OPPO Find N3, it's just impossible. Also, I want to impose a question to those who want a larger cover display. Are you using a foldable devices unfolded or folded most of the time? If you prioritize the cover display more, then why did you buy a foldable device? Do let me know down in the comment section below. We'll then focus on the technicalities. By just comparing the color accuracies and brightness between these two phones, inner display, it once again tells the same story. I have no idea why the OPPO Find N3 screen is just not color accurate at all, yet dimmer than Samsung's screen. Now at first glance, the crease of the OPPO Find N3 is definitely shallower. It does use a completely different type of support behind that foldable display, hence it is flatter than Samsung's crease. Still, I'm not sure what's the long-term implications here on OPPO's side, since we only had this phone for 2 weeks and I had my Galaxy Z Fold 5 for about 2 months and the crease got deeper over time. Of course, the hinges on both of these devices are also very different. OPPO arguably has a thinner hinge, but as mentioned in our full review that you can watch at the top right corner there, it doesn't open flat, and you can also test it out by placing the phone on a table at the side. It's not a big deal though, since I, a foldable user, didn't realize it for the first time until someone mentioned it to me. What I'm curious about is the lack of proper IP rating on OPPO's side, even though their official video shows the phone getting splashed wet with water. There is also no official IP rating on OnePlus Open's webpage as well, and I just want to ask, is this deception? Maybe. Even though I won't dunk my phone in a bowl of water, I can at least go about my day knowing that the Galaxy Z Fold 5 has an official certified IPX8 rating. The design of both of these phones are very minimalist and clean, though I did wrap my Galaxy Z Fold 5 with a skin just to improve its grip and also offer some protection. Either way, I really do like the Galaxy Z Fold 5 more since its camera bump is out of the way as much as possible and also smaller. And why do I like it that way? Well, because it's the way I hold the phone while using the cover display. It just feels better on the Z Fold 5. But for the OPPO Find N3, it just feels weird since my finger is constantly touching the camera bump, especially the ultra-wide angle camera. I mean, it's just a waste of space. The camera sensors are not that big and I'm consistently smudging up the lens because the camera bump placement. Since the camera bump is so huge, the OPPO Find N3 does not have wireless charging, so do keep that in mind. The Galaxy Z Fold 5 does not have any of these issues and still has wireless charging too. Now for the cameras, they are very different between the two, of course. Both of these phones uses completely different camera sensors and produces different colors of pictures, but the focal length on both of these phones' cameras are pretty much identical. The picture quality on both of these phones are good, both are clear, but the color reproduction is the main difference here. I don't know how to describe it, but I do think the color profile on the OPPO Find N3 with the Hasselblad approved color signs is just a bit better. It feels more lively. The pictures taken during the golden hour also has a more prominent hue, while Samsung just looks more blue in comparison. Overall, I just like the shots coming out of the OPPO Find N3 a bit more. Night shots are also very different between the two. Samsung tends to have a longer exposure time to get a brighter image, but also over sharpens the image to the point that noise starts to appear. Still, I like a mix between the two cameras if we are talking about night shots. Having longer exposure is definitely better, but less sharpening is also better. Now, let's talk about zoom shots. These two phones aren't made to have bonkers zoom in mind, but I might have some idea why OPPO decided to use a periscope lens for the 3x optical zoom, whereby the Galaxy Z Fold 5 can only do 3x optical zoom with a pancake lens. You see, these shots are taken with 10x zoom. While there isn't much difference in terms of clarity, it is noticeable that OPPO is a lot clearer. Then if we bring forth 30x zoom, the OPPO Find N3 is definitely a lot better as it cleans up the image better. While we're here, let's talk about the camera's adaptive interface for foldable devices. Samsung calls it the Flex mode and OPPO calls it the Flex 4 mode. Their camera interfaces in this mode are just very similar. And if you want to preview the pictures taken though, Samsung's Gallery app also has an adaptive interface, but OPPO does not. How about the video capabilities then? Well, both of these phones can take up to 4K 60fps videos, and I took these two videos at the same place, one during the day and one during the night. The daytime videos from both of these phones look very similar to each other, but the stabilization on the Galaxy Z Fold 5 is better. For night videos though, it is pretty much the same story, very similar video quality, but the stabilization is still better on the Z Fold 5. Surprisingly, both of these phones also have external microphone support too. If I just plug in a USB Type-C microphone to both of these phones, then they work without any issues at all. I was surprised by this because the OPPO Find N3 wasn't able to do this at first, but a new firmware update added this feature to the OPPO Find N3. Now, the software though is by far the most polarizing aspect between these two phones. I find myself liking and disliking some of the features available on these two phones. Let's start off by talking about the Taskbar. I have no idea why OPPO's implementation is so limited and I can only put 4 items on the Taskbar and nothing more. The Galaxy Z Fold 5 on the other hand lets us put double the amount of items and also 4 recent apps, filling up most of the space available. Samsung's implementation here is definitely better. Then comes multitasking. Both of these phones have the same implementation of side-by-side view, but OPPO has something new called boundless view. I think this is currently the most unique take in terms of multitasking that I've seen so far, and it works really well too. However, OPPO's implementation of the sidebar is pretty pointless, honestly. It's mostly a duplicate of the Taskbar's app list button, whereas Samsung's Taskbar is customizable. You can just do whatever you want with it and also adds a lot of useful utilities within that sidebar alone. And once we fold the device, the OPPO Find N3 will ask us if we want to continue using the app on the cover display. Just swipe up and then it will transition to the cover display. Real simple, right? This is a more flexible implementation compared to Samsung's rigid options. On Samsung's side, I have to select which app to automatically transition to the cover display in the settings menu, and I cannot choose it on a case-by-case basis. And this, it might seem like just a power button, but the software plays a big role into making this button to become multifunctional. Samsung calls this the side button, and you can customize it in the settings menu to do two tasks. I'll just leave it like this since I think double pressing it to launch the camera quickly is very nice to have. OPPO, on the other hand, hard locks this button to launch the Find Easy app. Again, I don't use this Find Easy app, and yet I cannot customize it to something else, not even to launch Google Pay or launch the camera quickly. If I disable this Find Easy app, then the shortcut will just not work. Now, there is another shortcut that we can launch the camera quickly, and that is by double tapping the volume up or down button to launch the camera. But that doesn't work if I have a pair of earbuds connected to the phone. Yeah. But what about app compatibility for unfolded display? Well, that's a funny thing to ask. I have always complained about apps like Lazada not scaling properly, and the UI elements are just out of whack on the Galaxy Z Fold 5. And even to this day, the UI elements are still horrendous for foldable devices. But on the OPPO Find N3, it does this. It splits the interface in two. The left half is always displaying the homepage, and whatever else I did will always display on the right side. Why is there such an interface? I don't know. I just don't find this interface to be useful at all. And also, while I was doing some shopping, I realized that OPPO is rather rigid in this regard. I cannot dynamically adjust their sizes like what I can do on Samsung's side. I mean, I would prefer this view rather than boundless view because I just want to compare the prices of both of these platforms side by side. Something that I really like with Samsung's software is modes and routines. This feature is particularly special for foldables because you can customize it to trigger some action whenever the device is folded or unfolded, or even folded halfway. I find myself using it to trigger some actions like open YouTube while it is fully unfolded to automatically transition to landscape orientation. Yeah, having this flexibility is real nice. OPPO, however, they do have an alert slider, and I like that a lot too. It's just a single push of a button, and then I can quickly set the phone to complete silent mode. It's convenient, and I think all phones should have an alert slider like this. How about the performance then? This is where things get a little bit funky. You see, both of these phones are using the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset, and in our review of the OPPO Find N3, I also redid the gaming test for both of these phones, and it is shown that for whatever reason, the OPPO Find N3 is just not that good in terms of its performance. That is because the phone just thermal throttles earlier, and that might be due to the thinness of the device. Also, the camera bump is just gonna act like a heat trap, and that's not gonna help with performance either. So what about the battery life then? Well, this is a bit complicated since the Galaxy Z Fold 5 comes with a 4400 mAh battery, whereby the OPPO Find N3 has a larger 4805 mAh battery. Yet in our controlled battery life tests, they are very similar to each other. It's probably due to the difference of resolution, and it's just funny that OPPO managed to match the battery life of the Galaxy Z Fold 5 so closely. Okay, now it's time for the charging speed. Obviously, OPPO side is going to be faster here since it takes in 67 watts, but it's a proprietary Super VOOC charger. That means you will need to bring your own cable and charger for your phone, and I think that's just ridiculous. If I plug in a USB PD PPS charger into the OPPO Find N3, then it will only take in 18 watts. 18 watts! That is like 2015 level of fast charging, and the Galaxy Z Fold 5 is only taking in 25 watts. While it is definitely not the fastest, at least it supports USB PD PPS charging standard, and I can plug in the same charger to my other phone, to my laptops or whatever, and yet the temperature control on the Galaxy Z Fold 5 is just much better. I really do wish more brands would just use USB PD PPS charging standard. And by the way, just to reiterate, the OPPO Find N3 does not have wireless charging because of that humongous camera bump that's blocking the way. Samsung's camera bump is at the side, so yeah, wireless charging is not gonna be an issue. And I still have two more things that I want to mention quickly. Both of these phones use USB 3.0 ports and they do have display output via USB-C, but Samsung has its iconic DeX mode whereby OPPO just merely mirrors the display. On the other hand, OPPO does have an IR blaster, so you can add remote controls on your phone, so you can control everything by just using this phone alone. You don't have to upgrade everything in your house to become a smart home appliance just to be controlled via the internet. Finally, after using these two phones for so long, I have a very thorough idea of what these two phones have to offer. So which one will I pick? Well, it's rather difficult to decide. Both these two phones have its own pros and cons. I'll go for the OPPO Find N3 for its camera, the alert slider, and also the boundless view feature. However, for the overall software experience, the phone's overall shape and size, screen color accuracy, and also little things like USB PD, PPS charging standard support, I'll go for Samsung. I think its user experience is just more holistic here. None of these two phones are exclusively better than the other though. So as for the price, I have charted a graph of its launch prices across its generation. It is not to scale since the currency is different and we are only showing the trend of how the price changes between the generations. As we can see, Samsung's price started high, but they have decreased and maintained over the time. OPPO, on the other hand, I had to use the UN pricing since it was not launched in any other parts of the world, and the price was maintained at first, but it has now risen. Perhaps the OPPO Find N4 next year will have the same price as well or even lower. I would really hope that to be the case. Anyway, I still want to comment about the price gap between these two phones in Malaysia. For the Galaxy Z Fold 5, it's at 7,299 ringgit for the 512GB version, whereby the OPPO Find N3 is at 7,999 ringgit for the 512GB version too. And I just gotta be very straightforward with you here. I think the OPPO Find N3 is too expensive. Sure, it is better than the Z Fold 5 in some aspects, but it's not 700 ringgit better. I do think that the OPPO Find N3 is more like a direct competitor to the Galaxy Z Fold 5 and it should be priced more or less the same instead of overpricing it by so much. Maybe try to undercut Samsung's price? That will be definitely raising a lot of eyebrows, right? I have not even mentioned about the promotions and deals since Samsung perpetually have them from time to time, and I don't want to get into them in this video because this video is already very long and the prices vary. The price of the OnePlus Open though is cheaper than the Galaxy Z Fold 5 in the US, so I don't know what to make of this. I just want to point that out. So at the end of the day, this is my comparison between these two phones. Which one is better and which one will you get? Or do you still think foldable devices are not ready for the public yet? Do let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And remember to subscribe on your way there, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I need some water.